those four friends and all of you friends here are gathering here today. And just feeling this kind of collective presence now. And just noticing a slight change in that we're gathering here together with a kind of a collective intention that we sense something more is possible. And when we gather that way, it seems like our focus is on that something more possible. And that becomes more vivid, almost like it becomes more in a high def. And I'm just very appreciative of that. I was talking with Mano, Jeff, and Joanna earlier, and we said this actually, we started doing this 2013. And Craig Hamilton was the one that initiated this, and he is who we have today in a recording. He asked us, he said he had a community there, and he said it's so important to meditate every day and make that a habit. But he felt it was very important to take one day a month and sort of have a little more dedication to that day in our practice of meditation and contemplation. And so we thought, hey, let's do this collectively. And there's a few other things that were evolving at that time that we thought would be a good idea too. But that was sort of the impetus for this. And 8 years ago or so, and here we are. So a deep appreciation for you all. And for this intention that seems to grow with us when we come together like this. And very quickly, if you're new, we begin at 10 and we'll have 4 meditation sessions today, each beginning at the top of the hour. And the first one will be a recording from Craig. And then we'll have 15-minute breaks. They'll be 45 minutes long with a 15-minute break. And we ask you to, if you're hanging with us, to sort of maintain this kind of, be very aware of this intention of what's happening, what we're doing here, and keep that very alive in the break. And so, yeah, today, Craig is going to speak about one of the postures of awakened awareness. And this is from the Opening to the Infinite program that he and Jeff Carrera started several years ago, and they ran for several years. They're not doing it now, although they did have a little weekend retreat this year. But it's sort of based on this factor that they identified, and they said there's not the only 8 postures, but they identified 8 core qualities of awakened awareness, 8 postures, 8 qualities of that kind of relationship to life that is part of an awakened relationship to life. And the posture he's speaking today is this posture of surrender. And what's interesting about these postures is that this relationship, this quality of life is in a sense already here, fully cultivated, fully present. It's mysteriously. And we're simply awakening to it, recognizing it. And in that awakening and recognizing, we're willingly allowing it to live us. And what's also amazing about these postures is when we recognize and awaken to one of them, they all are awakened. They all start living us. And today with surrender, Craig is basically asking us to let go of this kind of relationship of life we have of believing we're in control of this process, needing to be in control. thinking we're in control, and recognizing that's really an illusion, that this awakened process of life is built into the very reality of existence itself. And we're just opening our eyes to it. And when we allow that to happen, it starts living us. But wanting to be in control, and even thinking need to be in control, is surrender, is not to surrender. Craig is pointing to it's much deeper than that. It's immediate recognition that never been in control, and allowing this awakened relationship to life that's already right here, already fully alive, allowing it to live us. And when we do that, when we just recognize it, something miraculous begins to happen. And part of my own life, I recognize even the reason for living, the meaning and value of life, is no longer questioned, because the meaning and value of life resides in the surrender itself. I sort of recognize it as it is the path and the goal and the path, the surrender. And by giving up this control, thinking I need to control, thinking I need to figure this out before I surrender, even thinking I'm the one doing it, is all part of the process that we have to let go of also. So it's a radical letting go. So again, I want to thank you for this, being here and putting our attention on this together, and feeling this and feeling the importance of this, and supporting each other and our letting go. So with that, we'll begin our first session now with Craig. So again, much love. I'm not hearing.
So surrender in its essence is really pointing us to a letting go of control. The phrase that Jeff and I attached to the word surrender was the humility to give up control. Surrender is the humility to give up control. So we've all gotten where we have in life by having a measure of control, by having a measure of an ability to influence outcomes. This is in many ways how humanity's gotten as far as we have. In some ways for better or worse, but really for better in so many ways. It's been our ability to understand how things work, therefore be able to predict how to make things work better, control variables to drive outcomes, that has enabled us to really bring forth all of our scientific and technological achievements, cultural innovations, and personally in our own lives, this orientation of how do I control and steer this life of mine to achieve success, establish good relationships, earn an income, etc., establish myself in life, grow my reputation, whatever, all the things we do in life. All of that has been from a certain orientation to life, very much about having control. And I'm not saying we're all control freaks. We might be relatively on the spectrum, relatively easeful about it, but fundamentally the orientation is still knowing where it's going, having a place I'm trying to drive all this, steering it there, controlling it to get there. And so while this works really well for achieving all kinds of goals in life, when it comes to spiritual awakening, we find that that particular orientation starts to fall short, really fall short. As we begin to glimpse our true nature, as we begin to discover who and what we are beyond the mind's constructions, as we begin to discover that there's a dimension of reality and of consciousness that's so far beyond anything our mind can comprehend, we begin to realize this is not something I have any control over. This is not something I'm going to be able to know and control and predict. I'm starting to touch into the edge of a process that the only way I'm going to be able to really get anywhere near it, the only way my consciousness is going to be able to begin to accommodate God, the only way I'm going to be able to make room for the infinite to begin to manifest in my being, my consciousness, is to find a way to let go of this need to control, is to find a way to really give up. Because this thing I'm touching up against, this conscious, intelligent love presence, it has its own order. It has its own knowing. It has its own way. It has its own agenda even. And it is, and I don't mean it's like a person, God on a throne with an agenda written down. I mean, we're realizing that there's a higher order here that is ever present and readily available to show up in our consciousness and as us. But it's not something we're going to, as a person, with our knowing, with our normal mechanisms of controlling and steering, it's not something we're going to be able to touch. And the deeper we begin to awaken, the more we begin to discover what it is that we're awakening to, the more clear it becomes that any attempt to steer or drive or control this process snuffs it out. That it will not submit to our efforts to hold on to it, to control it, to make it happen. There's nothing we can do from our normal mechanisms of doing that will have any influence over it at all. It really demands our surrender. It really requires us to let go completely, to impose none of our petty agendas, none of our small ideas on it, to allow a deeper and higher process to begin to just move within us, to unfold itself as us. We just have to find a way. We have to get out of the way. Now, what it means to turn that into a meditative practice, anytime we're talking about making room, allowing, including, not knowing, not imposing an agenda, it all, those are all shades of surrender or elements of surrender. But I wanted to share today, as a leaping off point into meditation, something that my own teacher said to me at a certain point on the path in meditation that took my own understanding of surrender to a deeper level. And this was in the middle of a very long meditation retreat, the longest retreat I ever did. It was about 6 months of meditation, essentially all day. And I think it was about 4 months into the retreat, my teacher said to me, I think, why don't you start staying up all night meditating too? Not just during the day, but meditate all night as well. And he said, but what I want you to try with these all-night meditations is come to the meditation not wanting anything from the practice, not trying to get anything from it. Just give yourself to it, give your heart to it, and don't demand anything in return. And I realized as I began to work with that there was, up to that point, in some sense, there was always a way, even though I was wholeheartedly engaging the practices, that somewhere, somehow, I was still doing it to get an outcome for me, to get some enlightening outcome for me. And so if he hadn't said that, I probably would have, okay, I'm going to meditate all night so I can really go deep. I'm going to really be a spiritual hero here, meditating day and night, like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, going for that enlightenment. And there would have been this agenda still, even a very, arguably noble spiritual agenda, but it's still somewhere I was trying to get. And as I began to work with this seemingly incredibly simple instruction of just not wanting anything, not needing anything, not trying to get anything from the meditation, another layer of surrender started to reveal itself, of really not even a spiritual agenda, not even a spiritual wanting, just a giving over. So I want to invite us all into meditation again. Now, just establish your meditation posture again. You can do this with your eyes open or closed. For the next period of time here, sitting, just to explore what it is to really not be trying to get anywhere and not trying to get anything from the practice. So the practice itself we're doing can just be letting things be, not trying to control our experience. That's one level of the practice. So we're not trying to control our experience. We're just allowing it to unfold. Whatever's arising, we make room for it. We don't push anything away. We don't try to avoid discomfort. We don't try to hold on to or perpetuate pleasure or comfort. We're making absolute room for the whole human experience to happen. So that's one level of the practice. That's the core practice instruction. And then on another level, also, we're doing all that but with no attempt to get anything from doing that, not wanting anything from that. Just giving ourselves to it, demanding nothing in return. surrendering to what's happening right now. Means I literally have no conviction or belief that it should be different than the way it is. There's one way that we can practice letting things be, or allowing, or including, where we're almost slightly, we're doing it because we know we're supposed to, and we're kind of, we're sort of putting up with reality. Like, okay, I know for this period of meditation I have to put up with the discomfort, I have to put up with any tension or agitation, and I'm not going to hold on to pleasant feelings even though I would like them and I'd like to have more of them. So there's a way we're sort of doing it as a discipline, kind of almost as a renunciation practice. I'm renouncing desire. I'm renouncing aversion or pushing away. And I'm just letting it all happen. But deep down, I would really like to have more of the good things, less of the bad things. Deep down, I have an idea of how this should really be working, and I'm just putting up with how it is happening. So that's one way we can do this practice. But the invitation here is to a deeper level of surrender, which is, I am genuinely not trying to get anything from this moment. And therefore, I genuinely don't care at all what I'm experiencing. I genuinely have no preference for happiness over suffering. I have no preference for comfort over discomfort. I have no preference for peace and quiet over chaos and disturbance. It's all the same to me. Letting it all happen with no insistence on any level that it should be any different.
And thank you, everyone.